Our third lesson this morning is a continuation of the passage that we heard Pastor Karen read, coming from Mark chapter 10. We will start with verse 35. Let us together listen for the voice of the Lord. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do whatever we ask of you." And Jesus said to them, "And what is it that you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You don't know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" And they responded, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink. And with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left hand is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the other 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to become first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. When I was a kid, I had many nicknames. You heard a couple of them earlier, but 3 additional ones stick out to me. My dad used to call me Tiger, and he was the only one that ever called me that. And even into adulthood, he would occasionally call me by my nickname. And whenever I would hear him say, "Tiger," my heart would melt just a little bit. There was something about the way in which he said it. There was a tenderness and a sincerity about it. Starting in elementary school, many of my classmates and teammates and friends called me Big Shiv. Some of them actually still do. And this was the result of the fact that until about midway through high school, I was always one of the biggest kids in the school. And it also meant that I was one of the most awkward and most clumsy. Some things change. Some things remain the same. And finally, my brother and my sister and a few of my really close friends would call me Bri. You know, it seems like no matter how short your name is, my name only has 5 letters, that someone's going to find a way to make it even shorter as a nickname. I don't know if it's just because we're lazy or just incredibly creative or suffer from a lack of creativity. Roderick. I don't know if you know, not only is a nickname for Roderick Rod, but also somehow Rory. Not really sure about that one. Or Margaret, Peggy, yeah, or Peg. That one makes sense, yeah. Or John, Jack, which, you know, newsflash, Jack's not any shorter than John, so I'm not sure. Jennifer, Jen, Eric, E. You know anybody named Eric that goes by E? Hey, E. Yeah, it doesn't get much shorter than that, I guess, unless your nickname is a grunt or maybe a hand signal, but you really have to be careful with that one. The best nicknames seem to be the ones that you don't give yourself. In fact, I would lobby that we come up with a rule that you can't give yourself a nickname. The nicknames given to us by others have a way of sticking with us and sometimes even replacing your given name. Nicknames like this may even lose their origin story. For instance, my grandmother, her name is Verlee. My cousins would call her Auntie B. And I'm not sure most of them had any idea as to why. I know I didn't, but that's what they all called her, Annie B. In our story from the Gospel of Mark, we meet two of Jesus' disciples who had collective nicknames. Throughout the Gospels, when they're referenced together, they're often called the sons of Zebedee. Now, and that's what they're called in our text. And that one's pretty easy to figure out. Their father was a well-known fisherman on the Sea of Galilee. So referring to them as such likely gave the hearers in that region a sense of who was being talked about. The names James and John, or their Hebrew or Greek equivalents, would have been common names in the first century, much like today. So a nickname would have set them apart in some way. But my favorite nickname for these two brothers, the sons of Zebedee, James and John, is the one given to them by Jesus. Now remember, these 13 guys, Jesus and the 12 disciples, the ones closest to him, spent a lot of time together. They witnessed each other's triumphs and their struggles, their gifts as well as gaffes. So it makes sense that they would have given one another nicknames. And earlier in the Gospel of Mark, we are told that Jesus called these two guys, these brothers, Boanerges. Now, that's not really catchy to us, Boanerges. But it means something like sons of thunder. Yeah, or probably more precise, sons of rage. Now, we don't really know where this came from, but there's this other story in the Gospel of Luke where James and John, the sons of Zebedee, asked Jesus if he would like for them to call down fire from heaven to destroy a town that was less than hospitable to them. Of course, Jesus said, no, let's not do that. But maybe that incident, or one like it, is the background for why they were called such a colorful nickname. Hey, everybody, look, here come the sons of rage. Or I guess maybe they were an early professional wrestling tag team, the Sons of Rage. We're never going to know. Guess someday we can ask. In a scene that seems to be somewhat typical for these brothers, this tag team, they pull Jesus aside in our text and ask him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." Really? Are you kidding me right now? Can you just imagine Jesus saying something to himself or maybe out loud? Oh my gosh, here we go again with these two. And maybe he did say something like that, but the author of Mark felt the need to clean it up a little bit. So according to the author, Jesus asks them, "Okay, what is it that you want me to do for you?" Now, remember, as you heard in the passage that Pastor Karen read, this scene follows Jesus telling his disciples that he was going to Jerusalem, where he was going to be arrested, condemned to die, put to death, and after 3 days, rise again. And somehow this is what's foremost in these two guys' minds. Hey, we want you to do something for us, Jesus. Now is the time to ask such a thing. It's almost like they were thinking, okay, if all of that's really going to happen, we really need to ask him now. That's true to the form of the Gospels. We see this kind of thing repeated over and over and over again. The disciples miss the point all the time. In fact, this vignette is the third in a succession of stories in the Gospel of Mark that tell the same story. Jesus predicts his death. The disciples don't get it. And Jesus has to remind them of what it actually means to be a follower of his, to be a disciple. Now, before we're too hard on the disciples, I must confess that this resembles my story too. Maybe yours as well. I can be pretty stubborn. I often miss the point altogether. Just ask Jennifer. Or maybe I just don't want to hear what is being said, or only hear the parts that I want to hear. Or maybe that's just me. But as you can imagine, when the other disciples discover what is going on, they get angry with the sons of rage, James and John. And this leads to more infighting among the ones Jesus selected to be his inner circle, the ones called to learn how to live like him in the world, the ones who are going to be called to set his example. Sound familiar? The broader church seems to have never grown out of that, really. So Jesus, as was his habit, calls them together. And again, I think the author may have had to sterilize what Jesus actually said. I can't imagine that he wasn't more than a bit salty with them and didn't say some choice words. Maybe he said, seriously, are you all kidding me right now? Have you not been paying attention? The author of Mark writes that Jesus said, you know that among the Gentiles, which is everybody else, those whom they recognize as their leaders lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it's not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be a slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus would have been right to be upset with them. We've heard the story. We've read it for ourselves. They should have known by now. They'd been hanging out together for almost 3 years. Every waking hour together. They were there. They were there when he befriended the friendless and welcomed children. When he reached out to the outcasts and touched the unclean. And when he fed the hungry, they were there. And they heard him speak, teach. And didn't he say, blessed are the poor in spirit? And again, blessed are the meek and the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart, the peacemakers. Isn't that what he said? And it seems to me, I remember that it was him who said, for those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will save it. And then again, he brought a child in front of all of the disciples, and he said, whoever wants to be first must be last and servant of all. Wasn't that him that said all of those things? And they had to see the way of Jesus and how it was unlike that which was common among others. They had to know that the leadership he embodied, the discipleship and the life that he called them toward was disparate than what one experienced in the palaces of power in the empire. Different than the force of the Roman occupiers. The public performative displays of piety among religious leaders. And the manipulative maneuvering for position among the populace. Jesus' way looked different. His way was different. They had to know, right? Didn't they? Yet somehow they missed it. How could they? They'd been there all along. Yeah. How could I? How could we miss it? Friends, Jesus still shows us the way. And it may not be what we thought it would be, or what we'd been told we should be looking for, or what others chase. His way is different. His is the way of humility, compassion, of mercy, of gentleness, of generosity, of peace, of love. His is the way of sacrificial servanthood. It's the way of downward mobility for the sake of others. Now, this is the way of the Christ. Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be the slave of all. For the Son of Man, Jesus, came not to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many. Jesus came to show us this different way, and then to liberate us so that we too might live into it. This is what we should be looking for. Let's not miss it. To God be the glory. Amen.